The climate crisis affects us all.
Climate change is real.
But those who've done the least to cause it are paying the highest price.
It's hurting the poor, the elderly,
people of color, women, and children the most.
We need the people and communities
who are most vulnerable
and most impacted
to be involved in decision making.
We can't have climate justice without social, racial, or gender justice.
We need women to be at the table, in office, in the streets,
leading the charge for transformative change.
We need you to join our network of climate leaders.
We are
Women4Climate. From Barcelona,
Auckland, Freetown,
Lima,
Lisbon,
London,
Montreal,
Addis Ababa, Ethiopia,
Mexico City,
Sydney,
New Orleans,
Paris,
Toronto,
Tel Aviv,
Vancouver.
we work in waste,
sustainability,
in urban experimentation, marketing, clean energy,
renewables,
green finance, textile.
Our projects are helping to build safe,
resilient, and equitable cities.
And a future that includes everyone,
no matter where you live
or who you are.
Through the Women4Climate Mentorship program,
we are learning from each other. We share our experiences,
our knowledge,
our achievements,
and our challenges.
The Women4Climate community has given me
hope,
network,
the platform to act,
an amazing learning opportunity,
leadership,
empowerment,
conviction. Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Good evening, Three's a Charm. So hopefully we have both audio and visual for those of you that are joining us this evening. The City of Toronto acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The city also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. I'm Councillor Jennifer Mckelvie. I am delighted to join you this evening. Thank you for your patience with the technical difficulties. It is my privilege to introduce Mayor John Tory to give his remarks.
Well, Jennifer, thank you. And I've said it twice, but you know what? It can't be said often enough how honored I am to be here with my colleague, Jennifer Mckelvie, and with my colleague as well. She's a different kind of colleague. Jennifer's an elected colleague, and Heather Taylor is a public service colleague, and both playing very important roles. You know, the video made reference to the next generation of climate leaders, and I'm old enough I could say they're both part of that next generation for sure, certainly a different one than me. And they're both occupying very important positions where they can make a difference at the City of Toronto. Jennifer Mckelvie, unusually, is a first-year councillor who's been appointed to the executive committee by me of the city and to chair the Environment and Infrastructure Committee, where's a place where she's going to have a big opportunity to make a difference. And I need not talk to you about the importance of the job of Chief Financial Officer. And Heather joins three other deputy city managers, the only other three we have, who are all women in the City of Toronto. And so we're trying our best to move forward. 52% of our public appointments are held by women at the moment as a city, and that stuff by itself isn't going to be enough to address some of the equity issues that are extant, but we're certainly trying to commit ourselves to doing as much as we can. And the same is true of climate change. We've made some bold declarations, and you know, those are pretty commonplace. And I have learned and been motivated by going to the Paris Climate Change Summit and then to the C40. One of my predecessors, David Miller, was one of the founders of the C40. He's now, I think, the North American head for the C40. And there was some discussion when I became mayor as to whether we should continue in that organization. And having gone to their summit a year or so ago, there's no question that the exchange of information, the exchange of even just the solidarity of being together, people who are committed to addressing the issue of climate change is fundamentally important. And it allows us to be perhaps a little later than some of the other cities in the video, but it allows us to be part of this, I think, most important initiative, Women4ClimateTO. And that is going to be good for two reasons. One, I know from having been a mentor many times in formal programs and informal, that the mentors learn more than the mentees, actually. That's the way this ends up working, because the people who are going to be the mentees are people who bring an incredibly unique perspective that's sometimes harder for us to get a handle on, as people who are in positions of leadership and are from a different generation by definition. And so I just want to say thank you to the mentors who've stepped forward. I want to say thank you to everybody involved in making this program a reality in the city of Toronto, because it is important. We should join the other cities in having a program, and of course, not just having a program, but doing something as a result of that program. And if you look at the scale of the challenge we've taken on to be net zero by 2050, people say that's a long way off. Well, it's a long way off because it's a big job to do it. And we're going to need all the help we can get, all the advice we can get, everybody at the table. Everybody has to be at the table, absolutely everybody. So I want to say thank you. I want to wish you well in the discussions. I will look forward to hearing Her Honor speak. I was saying in the previous 2 iterations before we had sound, you are dealing here with someone who is not only our Lieutenant Governor and has done just a fabulous job in that regard in every respect, but you're dealing with somebody here who had credentials and credibility on this issue long before she was Lieutenant Governor. And that's why I'm so interested myself in hearing what she has to say. You're dealing with somebody who has to choose her words carefully, but that hasn't stopped her from an incredibly thoughtful continuing contribution on these and many other issues. So thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for your leadership, Jennifer, and Heather, and Courtney Smith as well. And I will look forward to watching the fireside chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Tory, and thank you for championing so many important initiatives in the City of Toronto, like Transform.TO, the Ravine Strategy, the Resilience Strategy, and importantly, getting out there on the global scale and saying all the great work we're doing here, because I think we're doing great things in Toronto, and the world needs to know that. So thank you so much. Now, I'm very pleased to welcome the Honourable Elizabeth Dowdeswell, the 29th Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. As the representative of Her Majesty the Queen, Ms. Dowdeswell carries out constitutional and ceremonial duties and facilitates healthy citizen and community engagement. Since taking office in late 2014, Her Honour has challenged Ontarians to think deeply about their role, not just as residents of the province, but as global citizens, building resilience and sustainability through inclusive economic prosperity, environmental stewardship, and social cohesion, as well as safeguarding democracy, have been the focus of her mandate. Her Honour will share some remarks, and then we will sit down for an informal fireside chat without the fire or being beside each other. Please do join me in welcoming the Honourable Elizabeth Dowdeswell. We need you to unmute. Sorry. I think you got muted during all our pauses.
Unmute. How's that?
We can hear you now. There we go.
Okay. I'll say good afternoon again and happy International Women's Day. It's been a wonderful week of celebration and, of course, very many and necessary calls for action. But what makes this afternoon's event perhaps unique is that it shines a spotlight on the role of women in one of the greatest challenges of our time, combating climate change. Your Worship, Councillor McKelvie and Ms. Taylor, may I say a very sincere thank you for your vision, determination, and commitment. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that you not only understand the various dimensions of sustainability, but that you're actively designing and promoting action that connects those dots between economic prosperity, social and cultural cohesion, and environmental stewardship. This particular initiative, Women for Climate, demonstrates that the burden of responsibility rests with all of us. So my warm congratulations to the participants and the mentors in this initiative. Environmental degradation is really humanity's problem. Women for Climate provides an opportunity to harness the intellectual resources and the energy that young women possess. Empowering young women by inspiring, informing, and enabling them to act is not only the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. Today is also the day that we pause to reflect on the lives lost and the many who have suffered during the past year as the result of a global pandemic. I've had conversations with leaders in Ontario during this pandemic, leaders in virtually all sectors, and citizens are seeking leadership. It won't surprise you at all that I heard stories that were poignant. People are vulnerable and they're grieving, and the abstract numbers very quickly become real. But equally, I've been inspired by stories of collaboration, courage, creativity, and adaptation, solidarity, empathy, acts of kindness, compelling stories of anxiety and hope in equal measure. Context is important, and the conversation we're having today is inevitably shaped by COVID-19. There are so many lessons that we've learned, and I think that many of these lessons are also applicable to the existential challenge of climate change that concerns us. Let me mention quickly just 4 of them. We've seen the wisdom of collaboration among all orders of government. You know, almost without exception, in my hundreds of interactions, people have commented positively on the fact that federal, provincial, and municipal governments were coming together in common cause. Furthermore, I think the other thing that has become so visible is the role of municipal governments, often forgotten and taken for granted. Yet, this is the order of government closest to people and absolutely crucial in building cohesive communities during a time of crisis. Every day, mayors manage very ordinary tasks, the services we rely on. But physically and socially, their actions are actually building community and impacting our daily lives. And as you just saw in the video, this plays out on the world stage as well. I was very fortunate in 2019 to join the mayor and Councillor McKelvie at the C40 World Mayors Summit, where we saw the transformative power of municipal leadership. And it was obvious that women were a significant part of that decision-making. That's really not a surprise to me. I've hosted women mayors in Ontario both before and after COVID, and those conversations have been so honest in their reflections of the loneliness of leadership, and yet so very genuine in their dedication to community. One of those conversations actually led to the creation of the first Women's Caucus of Middlesex County Council. A second lesson is that we have had real evidence of trust and confidence in science, resulting in evidence-based decision-making. Of course, we also saw that not everyone understands how science works, that as it evolves, advice does not remain constant, as it shouldn't. Hence the debate about masks and distancing and the speed of closing borders. That was at times confusing, and the concurrent lesson we've learned is the absolute necessity of clear, consistent communication. But it has been said that we make progress at the speed of trust, and communication is important in building trust. And of course, how very proud we all are at the singular focus of scientists and researchers as they race to discover vaccines and treatments. The third insight I've had is that the pandemic has illustrated so vividly the fact of our interconnectedness. Few can recall any other circumstance in their lifetimes when everyone, everywhere, has been affected by a singular event. The closing of borders was unthinkable, and repatriating citizens most challenging. And who knew the fragility of our supply chains and how dependent we really are on other nations? You know, for those of us in the environmental community, we've been trying to teach for years about ecosystems, systemic and holistic thinking. Well, this pandemic has illustrated that we still operate in silos, and there are so many disconnects. For example, and just one example, we are now more aware than ever that issues we've long considered women's issues, such as childcare and early childhood education, are critical if we are going to see once again a productive economy, perhaps a she recovery. But of all these observations, the fourth and perhaps most important one is that the fundamental question of inequality has been fully exposed. Who is essential? Who and what is valued? We've seen the indignity of growing unemployment and homelessness and come to understand that there is no vaccine for poverty. We are a prosperous country, a prosperous province and city. Yet if we really look, we see lives of quiet desperation. This pandemic is being experienced very differently by the rich and the poor. We're all being forced to examine the systemic racism of Indigenous, Black, and people of color, the weakness of mental health supports, the quality of life for migrant agricultural workers and those of differing abilities and disabilities. Women are bearing the costs of this pandemic disproportionately, whether suffering in silence from domestic violence, robbed of the continuity of a career path, exhausted by trying to work, care for elders, educate young people, and maintain their personal physical and mental health. As we all yearn to return to some sense of normalcy, we have the opportunity to design and build a better normal, a reset, if you like, not going back to the status quo. It's worth asking whether or not we can maintain the momentum of the lessons learned and avoid collective amnesia. Will we actually create the conditions for sustainability and resilience? Will we be bold and ambitious? And that brings me back to your specific interest in climate action. I believe that these four lessons about collaboration, trust and confidence in science, our interconnectedness, and equity, ensuring a place at the table for all, are equally applicable to addressing climate change. Because putting a human face on the impacts of climate change is really all about justice. And one last thought. It was 25 years ago in Beijing at the UN's World Conference on Women that the matter of women and the environment was for the first time clearly put on the table. I was privileged to be there. And at that time, I spoke of the need for action. I quoted a Zen saying of which I'm very fond. After inspiration comes the laundry. And I repeat it again today because now is the time to do the hard work. I wish you well. I wish us all well as we continue through challenge and crisis to meet our common vulnerability with caring, courage, and boldness. Merci, miigwech.
Thank you so much, Your Honor. And I wrote that down. After inspiration comes the laundry. Thank you for your remarks, for joining us, for dealing with the technical issues that we had. Of course, events are quite different these days, not being able to sit beside each other. So thanks for sticking with us on this. I remember the first time we met. I don't know if you do, but it was 2011. It was at NSERC's Maximizing Opportunities, Increasing Women's Participation in Science and Engineering Summit. And the advice you shared with me at the table, because we were looking about the whole chats and the discussions were about increasing women's participation, you said, take a risk. And it certainly has been advice that has served me well. So I was just wondering if that's still the advice that you share with women, and maybe how has this advice served you well?
Well, as His Worship indicated, in this particular position, probably taking risks is not what I should be doing, but it is the advice that I would still give. I was so fortunate over my careers, and I say careers because about every 4 years or so I change, and they seem to be totally unrelated to anything I've done before. It's only when you look backwards that you can make some sense of it. But I think I've always been curious, and that is really what has spurred me on to taking some of those risks. My mother, bless her heart, always said, you can do anything you want to do as long as you work at it. And so I've learned to know myself. And one of the things I know is that I'm not a good maintenance person. I really like to be creating. I like to be creating institutions. I like to be dealing with state-of-the-art problems that we're facing, and then staying long enough to get some solutions worked out and to get them rooted before I move on to the next. But I must say, whether it's been work in oil sands, nuclear waste, climate change, any of those issues, seemingly unrelated to work that I did in the cultural field and the educational field, taking the risk and being able to draw the connections has been so important. You know, when somebody puts a new opportunity before me, I was fond of saying that I had 3 questions to ask. One was whether or not it was worth doing, whether I was likely to be working with interesting people, and whether it was something I knew absolutely nothing about, so I'd be learning every day. And that is a risk.
Oh, that's wonderful. And you said your mother told you you could do anything, which I think is also great, because I often hear from women that are questioning their qualifications and especially their ability to work in the environmental sector. So they point out, oh, I don't have an environmental science degree, or I don't have an environmental studies degree. You know, can I still work in this space? And I don't think you had the traditional pathway to the environment either. So, I mean, what would you say to women that are questioning their ability to work on climate action?
You have no idea how many times I've been asked, what on earth is a home economist doing working on nuclear waste or working on the environment? Seemingly no relationship at all. One of the things that I've learned in retrospect is that, in fact, the world of policy certainly needs people who connect, who build bridges. And particularly the work that I've had the good fortune to be engaged in has allowed me to build those bridges between science and policy, whether it's climate change, whether it's endangered species, whether it's nuclear waste, whatever it happens to be. I knew nothing about any of those fields before getting involved in them, but somehow I could always see the patterns, the relationships. And so often, the answers to these huge problems that we face lie in being able to break down silos, to think in a holistic and systemic way, to pull together people who are among disciplines, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. And you know, that the nexus of those is where the real insights come. That's where the answers come. When Mayor Tory said at the beginning that all visions and voices need to be heard, he's absolutely right, because you never can know just where that spark will happen, and someone will run with it. So it's a formula that's worked for me. I don't know whether it will for anyone else or not. I wouldn't presume that, but absolutely essential for the kind of issues that are so complex that we're facing these days.
Well, you're certainly an expert at bringing people with diverse backgrounds together to solve complex problems. We've seen you do that as a leader, executive director at UNIP, the United Nations Environment Program, continuing that on with the Council of Canadian Academies. So it's certainly your special talent. But now that you've moved out of the kind of traditional science policy space into your new role, how have you really taken that, and how are you applying that in your new role? Because I'm sure you seem to like people too much not to meet with them and hear what they have to say.
Well, you know, so many people ask what on earth a lieutenant governor does, and I can start very quickly with the constitutional role and the ceremonial role, and then very quickly move to what I adore most about this position. And that is, I have the opportunity to convene people, to listen to people, to learn about people and what really is concerning them, what they appreciate, what they aspire to. That's why I do so many events, so many civic visits. We have a program that takes us out about 700 events a year. And so I do get to hear what people think about and what they say. And it is that listening and making connections and providing what I call a safe space for conversation. People know that I cannot be political. I must not be, and I must not be prescriptive. And when they come here, they usually come to meet people they've never met before, whether it's over something to eat or whether it's just a reception or whether it's listening to a wonderful speaker that they may not have heard before. Coming to the Lieutenant Governor's Suite is a chance to learn. It's a chance to listen to others, and hopefully often a chance to go away motivated to do something. One of the very first things that I did was to try and understand who Ontarians thought they were. It was really a question about identity. And they had great difficulty differentiating being an Ontarian from being a Canadian, for example. They couldn't put a name on it. And I mused that probably one of the most iconic things about this province was actually the Great Lakes. Because it is where we learn environmental stewardship, certainly. We see these lakes from space, for heaven's sake. But it's also where community was built and where economic development took place in this province, particularly, if not in Canada. And so I put together an art exhibition called Identity, with people who worked on artists who worked on the Great Lakes. And you know, not a day would go by when we had that exhibit up, but what people wouldn't come over and say, do you want to hear my Great Lakes story? And it was just so common. And that started the conversation about all elements of sustainability. So sustainability has been part of what we do for the entire time that I've been in this position. And it's allowed me to continue talking about environmental stewardship, to be sure.
Wow. Well, the final question I have for you relates to International Women's Day. And this year's theme is Choose to Challenge. And so maybe you can just conclude by letting us know how that speaks to you.
Well, fundamentally, I think women just are and have to be at the heart of humanity. It's because women are so often at a place where people learn from being a child upward. Indigenous women are the soul of any community, and we learn from them. They care deeply about the environment. And I think we're discovering in this time of pandemic just how very, very important women have been to helping us heal, to helping us care. And what can be more important than that?
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I've written tons of notes today because I continue to learn from you 10 years later. I was so lucky that at that event in Ottawa, I sat at your table and we were able to start a conversation. Thank you for the advice to take a risk. It has certainly served me well. I think it's gotten me to the role that I'm in right now. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening.
And again, congratulations to all your mentees. What a wonderful opportunity they're going to have, and I wish them well.
Well, soon we'll be talking about their projects and sharing more of that. So I look forward to sharing that with you. They are exceptional, and I've heard many stories about how much the mentors have learned from them too. So it's a great collaboration that we have. fostering on innovation and making room to have women at the table.
Great. Thanks again.
Thank you. It's my pleasure now to introduce you to Heather Taylor, Chief Financial Officer for the City of Toronto, who is going to introduce our next guest and have a fireside chat without the fire or without being beside each other. Welcome, Heather, over to you.
Thanks, Councillor Mckelvey. It was such a pleasure to hear not only from our own Mayor Tory, but also the Honourable Elizabeth Dowdeswell. It's always an inspiration to hear her speak. So thank you so much again to both of you for joining us tonight. I'm super excited to introduce our next speaker. I'm thrilled to share with you that she is not only a Torontonian, she is incredibly brilliant, she is dynamic, she is successful, and she is an up-and-comer. I shouldn't even say up-and-comer because she's already here. Courtney Smith. And Courtney is the founder and CEO of NewNew. It's a new social network to create connections. And since launching last year during the pandemic, she became part of a very, very small community, actually a very rare community of less than 20 founders to build an 8-figure venture-backed company. And prior to NewNew, Courtney spent over a decade with someone that people here in Toronto know very well, Drake, a Grammy Award winner, and she was on his management team where she handled his business endeavors and special projects. But tonight we are going to be treated because Courtney is going to share a little bit about her entrepreneurial journey and what she sees going forward. So I am super excited to welcome Courtney all the way from LA. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome.
We had a few little technical glitches at the start, but hopefully you can hear us too.
Yep, all good.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. You know, before we start, I want people to actually know a little bit more about who Courtney is.
Yeah, so hey everyone, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here and to be talking with all of you. Also, by the way, I'm like Heather's super fan, and it was like clear to me right away when we met that she's incredible and a really fierce woman representing Toronto in such a big way. So props to you, like you're doing an incredible job. But yeah, I'm Courtney Smith and I'm an entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of NewNew. And NewNew is essentially a decision-making platform that lets you vote to control the outcomes of other people's lives. And you get rewarded by watching people live out what gets the highest number of votes from the audience. So it's pretty cool and a really unique concept that hasn't been done before. So it's like from people voting on what you should eat for dinner, helping you choose what to wear to work or to a party, helping you figure out who you should date next, kind of all those things. It really taps into the human psyche, and it's something that we see shaping the future of the creator economy. And for us, we have really incredible investors like Will Smith and angels who have been at like huge companies like Facebook and Netflix, Twitter, Google, as well as VCs like Andreessen Horowitz and Founders Fund, who are two of the biggest and largest funds in the Valley. And prior to me getting into tech, I spent 11 years, which is very long, working on Drake's team. He offered me a job to work with him when I was going to school at Ryerson, so I have that Toronto connection. And he only had a few mixtapes out at the time, but I took him up on his offer. I took the leap, dropped out of school, and I followed him on his wild dream. And I started out as his assistant and then transitioned into his management around 3 years later. And I worked with his manager, Future, on everything on the business side of things in the Drake world. And I also launched a beauty brand called Theron for custom hair extensions for women. So clip-ins and wigs and like all the really fun things. And also a giveaway app called Surprise, where you can play fun interactive games to win free prizes. most importantly, though, I'm from Toronto. So even though I have lived in LA now for a little over 4 years, I will always be a Toronto girl, even if I'm thousands of miles away. And that's why joining you all today is a really special thing for me.
Well, that's awesome. So I have to ask you, because you know that we're at the tail end of our winter. Out of all the things that you loved about Toronto, I'm sure winter might not be at the top of your list.
Yeah, definitely not. Sorry. Not at all.
So I'm thrilled that you actually highlighted your experience in Toronto. What do you think it was about Toronto that helped shape who you are?
I say that being from Toronto is like one of my superpowers. There are so many times I come in contact with new people and they're like, wow, you're so polite. You're so nice. You're so different than everyone else I've been meeting. And I know it's because I was raised in a city that just holds itself to a higher standard. And it might be difficult to realize that if you have lived there your whole life and haven't lived anywhere else, or if you haven't left the city in a really long time. Because I'd say if you have, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You realize like very quickly that the way you handle yourself in new settings and around new people, it's just different than the way other people handle themselves who are from different places. It's like a very weird thing, but I've picked up on it like quite a few times. So I'd say it's kind of like a built-in power that everyone from Toronto has, honestly. And I would encourage you to use it places when you have the chance. And I do really miss the city, and my friends are there, my family's there, and I will always like consider Toronto my home, regardless of like wherever I am in the world.
That's awesome. Well, so you gave us a little soundbite of what NewNew is. Can you actually maybe elaborate a little bit more about how it works?
Yeah, so with NewNew, we're like completely obsessed with owning the voting and the polling vertical and really creating a platform where everyday people can earn money by having others vote to control daily decisions in their lives. So you can buy a share of a person's decision, and the more you spend is the more control over the decisions that you have to make. And then you get to watch the people actually do the things that you voted on. You can make someone, decide what they should eat, what they should wear, all those things, including, choosing a school to go to, what you should major in, what you should name your baby. Like, it gets pretty crazy. So the options are endless, which makes it really fun, and kind of it shows you creative ways that people can do things pretty much every week. And it goes for us way beyond a platform for just celebrities or just influencers. It really enables regular people from around the world to generate income. No matter how boring, you think your life might be, there might be people out there who are willing to pay money just to watch you live it and to have a say in the things that you do. And we were also one of 9 companies that were chosen by Snapchat, and we got to partner with them a few months ago. And so a lot's been going on for us. It's really exciting, but it's also just the beginning of our journey, and there's a lot more we want to accomplish.
Yeah, and I did say when I was introducing you, and I just need to call it out. You did this. You launched NewNew during the pandemic. So, I have to say kudos to you, because that speaks to your braveness and your boldness and the confidence that you have. So, huge accolades to you for doing it during COVID. So, yay.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that.
We all know it's never, all rosy and easy. What would you say? So, you're an entrepreneur through and through. First and foremost, what do you think is what drives you as an entrepreneur?
I just really love to create things that make an impact in people's lives. Like, I always loved finding ways to be entrepreneurial, even from like a really young age. So I knew early on that eventually, somewhere down the road, I would build something of my own or create something of my own. And I knew I would definitely at one point just follow my own path. And I was just completely obsessed with coming up with innovative ideas and figuring out how, you know, they could benefit people, or if they could entertain people or make them happy, or just, you know, give them something to look forward to in life. And that's really kind of what drove me to become an entrepreneur from the very beginning.
It's kind of neat when it's in your DNA, right? When you think about the fact that this is just your mindset and how you approach things. And
100%.
as an entrepreneur, you know, you go through the peaks and the valleys. What would you say is one of your, you know, from your experience, because you've mentioned that you've had more than one startup, what do you think has been your biggest challenge?
Yeah, I'd say as far as the biggest challenge, one thing I've learned is that regardless of how much money you raise or how much money your company generates, putting together a really great team, like a great team, you know, people who operate at a really high level, who have killer execution, killer drive, who just like hustle, they have ambition. That's something that is incredibly hard to find, like very, very, very hard to find. And finding those people is just a never ending process. And honestly, it's just part of the process where you're going to have to meet a lot of people, hire a lot of people, and ultimately fire a lot of people who just aren't the right fit. And that part doesn't get any easier with money, because money doesn't buy passion and it doesn't buy drive. So you really just have to meet as many people as you possibly can. It's trial and error, and you have to just cut out the people who aren't a fit very early on, so they don't kind of ruin the culture of your company. And at the end of the day, you know, you're only as good as your team. So you really want to make sure that everyone who's working with you is operating at minimum at your level.
That's great advice. So you know that part of the audience that we have tonight are the mentees that have been participating in our Women for Climate program. And they are going to be going through a pitch that you are on the panel for in the next few weeks. But you have attracted venture capital. And as I mentioned when I introduced you, and I want to emphasize the fact that it's an 8-digit company, right? So we're talking big dollars. What's been sort of your secret ingredient? What would you recommend to this group of mentees who are preparing pitches, who are going to be in front of potential investors? You know, what would you say? What kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah. Fundraising is a lot like dating. Like, it's true. You're going to meet a lot, like tons, not even a lot, tons of bad fits. You'll meet investors who might kind of get you, but like not really. And then once in a while, like really rarely, you'll find investors where that spark is there like immediately, and you just connect with them on another level. And it's also similar to dating in the sense that it's really exhausting. Like, it's very exhausting to fundraise. It's just a nonstop process until you get to the finish line. And I'd say, you know, for us, what mattered the most when we were raising was partnering with investors who really believed in us as founders first, which to us was the most important thing. And then secondly, it was finding investors who actually really cared and believed in our vision and who believed in what it was that we were setting out to build. And I would say, you know, when we did kind of embark on that journey to raise funding, I sent over like 250 cold emails to like VCs, investors, angels, like a whole bunch of just people that I had to Google and like find out about them. I took 50 meetings a week, and I slept probably, like, I'm not exaggerating, 2 hours a night for many weeks. It was completely exhausting. And I also didn't use my network, because for me, it was really important to have people invest who actually cared for the business, and not just people who kind of felt like, oh, I know her, let me just give her money and I don't really care about what she's doing. So it was really important for us to find people who really, really were just as passionate about the business as we were. And ultimately, you know, I heard a lot of no's. Like, and the thing is, it's normal, but I say 90% of meetings were a no. And that's fine because we knew that our product and our vision eventually would resonate with the right people and that we would eventually find the right people, and we did. So I'd also say, like, you know, if you ever do decide to raise funding for your company, you really can't get discouraged by people telling you no. It's really just part of the process. And if anything, it should really push you to kind of keep going until you find the right people to partner with.
So it's interesting though, because, you know, we always say that we learn from all our experiences, positive, negative, etc. When you think about how you framed your story when you were talking and to potential investors, did you in actual fact take away learnings from the no's and either maybe amend your pitch or tweak your story? You know, did you make those no's learning experiences?
Oh my gosh, like 1,000,000% yes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't look back and like, I don't like hold a grudge with anyone who told us no. And I would also say, like, between, which is also a very crazy thing, between every pitch that we had, we would hear feedback about something and immediately like go to the document, like edit it in real time, spitball back and forth, like, okay, should we say this? Should we say this? Like, it was a constant learning experience. And all those no's kind of led us to the perfect pitch, which is how we ended up landing perfect investors. So even though a lot of people told us no, yeah, I would argue that it helped us in many ways because it made us think about our business in different ways. People put different like bugs in our ears and we're like, oh, that's really interesting. Let's add it in. So everything at the end of the day was a benefit. Every no had some sort of benefit in some way, shape, or form.
And that's one of the things we've been trying to explain to the mentees, right? That everything is a learning experience and it's about growing and developing and expanding your perspective. So, I mean, for those who are listening, you've just heard it from a pro, from someone who's immensely successful. So hopefully they believe it. It's now that they've heard it right from you.
Yeah.
When you think about, I mean, we're getting a sense of your personality and your approach to how you do things. What would you say the three or the top characteristics are that really make you Courtney, that really make you that dynamic, successful entrepreneur? Because these mentees are going to be looking at you saying, okay, you know, they want to emulate, they want to be like you, they want to be, they want to experience that kind of success. So what are those characteristics that they need to look at?
Yeah, being an entrepreneur and like starting your own business or your own company, it's really hard. Like, I'm not here to sugarcoat things. I'm not that person. It's really tough. And it comes with a lot of sacrifice. And honestly, you will not make it if you don't know how to sacrifice. Like, I've had to make tons of sacrifices along the way. I had to take tons of risks. Looking like now, a lot of people looking back and be like, oh, that was such an obvious thing you should have done. And it's like, no, like nobody else would have done it. I decided to take the risk like really early on to do something that could have easily failed or didn't make any sense. Also, just being incredibly relentless. Like, I never give up. Same as like when people told me no, it just fueled me to kind of iterate on my pitch, iterate on my focus, and then keep going after people who would eventually tell me yes. So I would say, you know, sacrificing, being relentless, taking risks, those are all really important. I mean, those are kind of like a must if you want to be an entrepreneur. You definitely need to do those three things.
That's right. And because, you know, as you say, there is definitely a difference between someone who is an entrepreneur and someone who is an employee. Now, you made that huge leap because you worked with Drake for over 10 years. Mm-hmm. And so you had the success and you had that security of working.
Yeah.
And what do you think was your nudge? What do you think was your nudge to, you know, for you to take that big leap of faith, which obviously was the best decision ever, but, you know, what what gave you that drive to leave that security and jump into the world of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, for me, I just knew it was time. Like something just went off. I mean, I was like, I need to start making moves and I need to start kind of laying out the framework for my future. I didn't want to wait too long, and I wanted to do it when I was just super passionate, super interested in just everything around me. And I'd say, you know, as I was working with Drake, I would be introduced to so many incredible people, like from like just huge business people, you know, athletes, entertainers, like pretty much everyone in the world who's gigantic, you end up meeting. And it kind of really pushes you because you see all these people living out their dreams and doing what it is that they want to do, and kind of doing what they were placed on this earth to do. And for me, it really became a moment where I wanted to just go out and live or fulfill, I'd say, my own destiny. That was really important for me to do, and for me to do it kind of at the right time and give myself enough space to, you know, get my feet wet, try things out, because of course things might not work out. You know, I could have failed horribly, like a lot of things could have happened. So I wanted to just set myself up properly and give myself time to try out new things and explore my options. So yeah, I would say it was just kind of like an internal clock that went off, and I was like, okay, I have to start doing this like right now. And that's what I did.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'm going to ask one final question. Words of inspiration for our mentees.
Ooh,
actually, that was my second last question. I have one more after that.
Words of inspiration. Honestly, being an entrepreneur, like as much as there's like all those things that sound like hard and negative and whatever, it is so rewarding to create something of your own and release it into the world and see how people react to it. Like when we launched one of our first apps ever called Surprise, which was like a contest app that gave away prizes, you would play live challenges. I remember when we hit 100 users, I cried. Like I literally was sobbing. I was just so happy that, you know, we created something, like a crazy idea that we had in our heads. We put our money together, we launched this app, people were using it. Like that feeling, I can't think of anything else ever in life that has given me that feeling. And that's really why I love being an entrepreneur. Like just living out your destiny, doing what you're supposed to do, making a change in the world, watching people, you know, react well to it, love what you're doing. All those things are just, they're just so incredible. And you really just need to go after your dream and do what it is that you feel you should be doing.
All right. My final question this time, I promise this is the last one. So International Women's Day this year, you heard the theme is choose to challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And here at the City of Toronto, just to share with you, we have an amazing women's network that's chaired by one of my colleagues, Josie Sholey. And so it was her vision not to take International Women's Day as a single event, but to make it into an entire week. And so this is part of our week, but we have been following the theme of choose to challenge. What would your thoughts be on what are you going to choose to challenge?
What will I choose to challenge? I mean, for me, as you know, a woman, obviously, and as a Black woman in a pretty notoriously male-dominated industry, I really do choose to challenge the status quo and really prove people wrong. Because, you know, in tech specifically, I'm like not every other industry, but in tech, you know, you had to be a white male who went to a certain school, whose parents were certain people, who you were friends with certain people. All these kind of stereotypes had to come together for you to even launch a product and be taken seriously. And for me, kind of blazing in and having, you know, no education from the top Ivy League schools and not having a background working at, you know, huge tech firms, to me, that like being able to do that and then watching now other women who can do that, that's incredible to me. And I really hope to see more women coming forward, especially minorities and women of color and Black women, and pretty much everyone just challenging what has been going on for many, many years, especially in tech, and showing that we all deserve a seat at the table, because we do, because we work our butts off.
And you're brilliant. Like, so Courtney, thank you. You know, you and I had the privilege of having a conversation before tonight, and I thought you were wonderful then. Honestly, you are inspiring. And what I really hope people get from this conversation is, looking at you, you see the power to be bold. The power to be bold and pursuing your dreams, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for you, because that you exude that. And I really believe that the mentees in our program really needed to hear that firsthand. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your ideas and your thoughts. The fact is, at the end of the day, as you said, your journey has had peaks and valleys, and it's grit and it's determination that's got you through.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm super excited for you. I can't wait to watch how NewNew unfolds. It is a fascinating idea. And I really hope, you know, as you said, choose to challenge. I hope more women, you know, hear your words and really do challenge the status quo and challenge the opportunity to have a seat at the table. So congratulations. And I'm super excited to watch your journey. When you come back to Toronto in the nice weather and when COVID is behind us, we will definitely go out and we will sit on a patio and we will talk about your adventures.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So, you know, thank you to you, Courtney. Thank you to our wonderful mayor who was generous with his time tonight. And thank you to the Honorable Elizabeth Dowdeswell as well. As Jen mentioned, our Councillor Mckelvey mentioned at the onset of this evening, Canada has three main cities, that are participating in the Women for Climate program. That is more than any other country that is participating. So we're one of 16 countries, but 16 cities, but Canada has 3 cities. And so, you know, for Toronto to be part of that, we're not late in the game. We're part of the solution. And truthfully, you know, I had the privilege of meeting David Miller. He's the former mayor of Toronto, one of the founders of C40. He's still involved with the organization. And the mentees actually had an opportunity to meet him in one of our events. And I'm grateful to him for reaching out to me and planting the seed about Women for Climate. There are a couple of people at Women for Climate, C40, that are involved in Women for Climate who were instrumental in getting Toronto up and running. And Sylvia Marcon and Marta Stencil were wonderful in providing us some guidance and some coaching to getting us off the ground, because we really did second guess whether or not the program was going to go forward because of, you know, it's hard to believe as of next week, we will be 1 year into COVID. Our program was supposed to launch on Earth Day, and we had to pull back and revisit our plan, see if we could pivot to a virtual platform, which we did, and we finally did launch on World Environmental Day, which was in June. So I'm grateful to the folks at C40 who really did provide some guidance and leadership for us so that we could launch this wonderful program. I have to give an amazing call out to Councillor Jennifer Mckelvey. As the mayor mentioned, she is just worth her weight in gold. She is pursuing climate change, resiliency, to make the city not only better for Torontonians today, but for generations to come. And the fact of the matter is that without her partnership in all of this, we wouldn't be here today. It just wouldn't have come together. as well as it has. But I do also want to call out the mentors. We have an amazing set of women who have graciously donated their time, provided guidance, provided motivation and inspiration, shared their expertise with our mentees. Each of our mentees has been incredibly lucky to have the one-on-one, undivided time and attention with their mentors. And then in addition to that, hopefully throughout this program, they took their wonderful ideas that they started with, their innovative ideas that they brought to the table, and throughout the knowledge lab. So they've not only refined their business idea, not only have they created financial plans and business plans, they now actually honed their pitch. And in a couple of weeks, they will be participating for a $20,000 prize to, in actual fact, make their business ideas come to life. And so I am so excited to see the growth, the development, the excitement, and as Courtney just said, the grit and the determination that hopefully they have learned and been motivated to find within themselves. We are so grateful to our sponsors. So we have our presenting partner, the Royal Bank of Canada, and we've got Ernst & Young Canada, as well as Ellis Don and Toronto Life for being our Knowledge Lab partners. They co-curated our programs with us. They have helped bring the program together and made our very first cohort so successful. Tonight's the final event, even though we're still virtual, it's the final event for the inaugural Women for Climate program here in the City of Toronto. I am so proud that we managed to get off the ground during COVID and host a virtual experience. And I am going to tell you that I know the rest of the panel, but Councillor McKelvie and I are so excited to hear the pitches, watch the level of confidence that has evolved. And I will say, stay tuned to the City of Toronto's communication channels, because we will be really excited to announce the winner in early April. And hopefully we will be able to get together soon in person, and we will look forward to not only seeing each of you, but also launching our second cohort. And until then, stay safe, everyone, stay healthy, and thank you so much for joining us.